Hello, everyone. My name's Sophia Hall, and I'm the moderator for today's Meet a Poet series. I'm a poet myself, hailing from Washington, D.C., where I served as the Youth Poet Laureate back in 2023. I'm a rising senior at the University of Pennsylvania, where I study English, creative writing, and consumer psychology, and I'm delighted to introduce today's poet for our Meet a Poet program, Patrick Washington. Patrick was forged in Washington, D.C.'s vibrant arts community of the mid-90s, finding his voice on D.C.'s famed U Street corridor. Nationally, as part of the dynamic hip-hop poetry ensemble POEM-CEES, he spent the early 2000s as a regular performer on HBO's legendary Deaf Poetry TV series. He then was commissioned to create a poem dedicated to the monument to Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., which he performed at the unveiling on the National Mall on October 16, 2011. He is the creator of Prince George's County's Youth Poet Laureate program, giving young people the opportunity to collaborate with city officials and serve as poetic ambassadors for their community. He also has been my poetry mentor for the past 3 years, and he is part of the reason why I was selected as a Youth Poet Laureate and representative of my hometown, Washington, D.C. So all love to you, Patrick. So thanks for joining us today, Patrick. I'm really excited to hear your spoken word, hear what you have to share. After the reading, we're going to have a Q&A session. So for anyone listening out there, feel free to put your questions in the chat, and I'm going to intermingle some of your questions with my own. Now I'm going to turn it over to Patrick.
Oh, thank you so much, Sophia. You've been a blessing, actually, just to watch your growth and your incredible artistry and just your family's support as well. It's really inspiring, and it's why I do what I do. So thank you for having me and reaching back to pick up my old bones and bring me along for the ride. So thank you very much, and I'm very pleased to be here with all of you today. My first poem is kind of a remembrance. It's a moment of looking back to growing up, and it's also a slight critique on the place where I call home. It's called Best Friends Forever. When I was 13 years old, my best friend in the entire world was a stringy-haired strawberry blonde with sun-kissed freckles. His name was Scott Hicks, and we were both Army brats living in Okinawa, Japan. The summer of 1983, I don't think my parents saw me at all. I must have slept over Scott's house every night. It was the first place I'd ever tasted Cap'n Crunch. The first place I'd ever heard the word supper. The first time a white person ever held my hand in prayer, ever addressed me, and I didn't feel a knot. It's where I discovered hair feathering was a thing. The only time I ever hid from the police, Scott was right there. It began with a misunderstanding at a midnight arcade, and somehow we both knew that no matter how innocent our sweet, buttery Cap'n Crunch breath may have been, our age and my shade had already convicted us. So we looked at each other and we ran. Like Fred and Barney, Lion-O and Panthro, Johnny Quest and Haji. I never felt like the sidekick, although whenever we flipped a coin for head-to-head football, he always got the quarterback. I thought it was just luck. We didn't know the rules yet, so we just played until we figured it out. He was supposed to like Phoebe Cates, the actress, and I was supposed to love Kim Fields from The Facts of Life. He got his pick of all the white solid gold dancers, and I got Darcel. We were adolescent boys, snickering to Eddie Murphy, cussing up a red leather storm, hitting freeze frame. Whenever Mama came walking into the room, Scott Hicks gave me my very first of a million listens to Journey's Don't Stop Believing. And I gave him his first listen to DeBarge's I Like It. I should have picked up on when his father heard it and drawled, well, I hate it. When my father received orders to return back to the States, Luke Skywalker and Han Solo looked at each other like, I've got a really bad feeling about this. We threw a few Hail Marys back and forth, like, what have you been up to? Any cute girls? Best friends forever, back and forth. But it's been 35 years, and we've never spoken once. I wonder what America has taught us since then. So that's my first poem. It was a, it's a moment of, it's a bittersweet memory. You know, that guy was my absolute best friend. And I think that differences and racism and the idea of biases, they're all taught to us. And as children, you know, we were very innocent. And as I got older and wondered where he was and why hasn't he reached out to me and why didn't I reach out to him? And we wonder. And I pray he's well. I've searched for him. But I'm afraid that America has done a number on us. And yeah, that's one of my regrets. So I came out with that poem. So I hope you got something from that. My next one is a poem that I wrote after visiting a plantation in Alexandria, Virginia. Actually, the plantation was owned by George Washington, and he had given it to his daughter. And his daughter lived there with her husband and their family. I believe it was 9 people, 9 family members, and they were served by 90 servants, 90 slaves, enslaved Africans. And as I walked through this place, and it was very elegant, it was very beautiful. Upstairs in one of the rooms, or actually in one of the hallways, there's a curved mirror. I hadn't seen anything like that before, and it curved outward. It was a large circular mirror, probably about 4 feet in diameter, and it kind of curved outward so that you could see around corners when you looked at it. And they told me that that was the servant's mirror. They were to stand out in the hallway with eyes on the mirror, and when they received a signal, they knew they were to come in and serve the masters of the house. So I created this poem dedicated to that servant. Yes, sir. How may I be of service? Would you like another man? I learned quickly. Never got hit once. I've seen enough overseers erupt wrath over men who stepped out of place or just stood too tall. I still carry their ash in my pockets to remind me. Shook their memory out of my hair, got myself straight. Now, I wear only the best clothes and I eat the best food. I've been crowned the most blessed of all the cursed in 2,000 acres. And here I stand, ears and eyes alight, a body with no mouth until addressed. My willingness to please and posture places me at the table's head, a prisoner of anticipation. I got real good at counting how many times they lift their cups to drink. Once they take 4 sips, then I come out. If the guest knocks their tea to the floor, I'm gonna make sure my apology swoops into the room before my body ever does. That damn Earl Grey must have been misbehaving all week, and the teacup might have jumped. I stand in perfect stillness, racing for favor, eyes holding every curve of the butler's mirror, searching for a sign of life. I don't know what it's like to be called a man, but I know I'm closer than I was yesterday. So, yes, ma'am. Oh, yes, sir. Please let me get that for you. And that's that poem. My last poem that I'm going to share is one of my favorites, and this is a true story, one of those things you can't make up. It's called Epiphany. God came to me, out of all places, Ronald Reagan National Airport, in the form of two angels with white hair, crumpled wings wrapped around withered backs at a metro stop, lost in looking for the gold line. Back to heaven is what I first thought until we talked. And I'm like, please stop apologizing. I'm here to help. These trains can be confusing, and at one time or another, we've all felt tossed. That's not it, she says. You just don't know what it's like to be 88 years old. Her husband had turned 89 the day before, and they had caroused the weekend with their eldest daughter, Mona, now seeing her off at this airport. Mona was 70. And Dad may not make it to 90, not due to old age, but because I see him start at what is probably their 5,968th argument. Woman, you're going to make us miss the train moving so damn slow. But he knows better than to ever leave her. And she knew better. 40 years ago, after what he did, maybe she should have let him go, but she thought about it. Decided, no. Why am I going to leave you? So you can run out there and have some more fun? No, no, no. I'm going to stay right here and kick your behind for the next 40 years. I'm not leaving my warm bed. You move over. You take the pillow. You sleep on the couch. And they fought and they made up and they stayed in love. You young people today treat marriage like you can just crumple it up and toss it away. But times are different now, and I feel like we're just two old folks in the way. I was born in 1911, he said. Herbert Hoover Airport was 200 miles away. I hadn't even seen an aerial plane till I was 30 years old. And now I put my daughter on a rocket ship. This world is moving way too fast for us. And she said, and this is true, she said, it's okay, Don. Just hold on to me. And that's when it hit me. Standing there watching two old people hanging onto each other, praying the other one doesn't just fade away. Face wet with epiphany at Ronald Reagan National Airport, I realized I wanted that. It's about more than sharing a last name or believing in soulmates, because if I still did that, y'all, I'd have three. This life isn't disposable. I'm living for the love of me. I want to fight like hell and make up until the walls sweat. I want to take her places until we run out of map, and I want to cling to her desperately at Ronald Reagan National Airport, telling strangers that my child is 70 years old and the baby's 60. I want to play games like, remember that time? Rocking back and forth on a porch until I can't remember anything anymore. And if the time ever comes around like summer vacation and I lose my faculties, I want to know that my blank stare would be met with one of love, honor, and dedication, just like Ron and Nancy's. And those are my poems.
Wow. Those were beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing, Patrick.
Oh, thank you for having me. I missed you. Where have you been?
I've been adventuring, getting to the end of college. It's crazy.
Oh,
and
I know you have. I know you have, man.
You've been a mentor for me. Yeah.
No. We've mentored each other. We fed each other through this process. You know what I mean? So thank you for that, you know?
Yeah, of course. And these three poems, like this whole reading, it was short, but wow, it really packed a punch. I mean, we went from childhood to long-lasting love and to your poem that kind of exposes the ugly underbelly of our country's history. A lot of energy is in the air right now about the US's bicentennial and the 250 years, but really it was built off of an unsustainable practice of slavery. And I'm really glad that we have this poem for discussion.
Yeah. You know, we live in a time right now where those types of works are being stifled. Books are being burned, with works like that. And I think that, the idea of, I come from, the West African tradition of the griot, which means there's always a storyteller in the village,
Hmm.
right? And they are the library, right? They are the ones who hold on to the stories. They're the ones who, uh, teach the traditions and the history about what happened and where we're going, and kind of offers the inspiration. And I think that we're going to have to go back to that, particularly if we're working under a repressive, regime, and they
Hmm.
are trying to stifle creativity and hide these works. You know what I mean? They go into museums and they want to cover things because it makes them look bad without really analyzing and becoming better because of the history. You
Yeah.
know?
And it's so interesting how one of my culminating moments as Youth Poet Laureate was performing on the Millennium stage at the Kennedy Center. And you were there and you were announcing me and my fellow poet laureates. And just a few days ago, we learned that our current president's name is going to be taken off of the Kennedy Center, which is just really funny, full circle moment for us. And I'm glad that we can have that there's like places for arts and culture again in
it,
DC.
it is so necessary, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah.
so necessary, man. Yeah, and we, yeah, I mean, they tried it, but I think the pure heart, we're coming through. I think it's coming through, and we just have to keep pushing.
Yeah. But besides the Kennedy Center, there are so many great venues in DC for you to do poetry, art. You have the American Poetry Museum. We have Busboys and Poets, and you got your start on U Street on what was called Black Broadway, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
can
yeah,
you
yeah.
talk a little bit about that and that culture of DC and how it shifted over the past couple of years?
Oh my goodness, yeah. I have so many memories and just fond recollections of that. It starts with, well, let me start off saying that I didn't become an artist, so I didn't discover my artistic voice until I was well into adulthood. I was, you know, in my late 20s probably. Although, in my younger days, I wrote and I kind of tinkered with the art, but it didn't really come to fruition until I reached U Street. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I I think around about the early to mid 90s, I began to venture out. I heard about a gentleman named DJ Renegade. That's a really cool name. DJ Renegade was a poet. He had grown up as spinning music, hip hop, as a hip hop DJ, but then he made the transition into poetry, and I was really intrigued by that. And I was like, wow, this guy, he's like so multifaceted. So I kind of sought him out, and in doing that, I discovered this artistic family. I started going to open mics, and U Street had a history way before I even started. Um, legendary artists like Cab Calloway, Duke Ellington, Pearl Bailey, James Brown. These artists began on the circuit playing music out in these theaters on U Street and that corridor. Um, and back in the 30s and 40s, there was the place to be. Black people would put on their Sunday best and go out and high step and just do all the dances and just have so much fun. It was a one place to kind of be free when they weren't being put upon elsewhere. And it thrived for a very long time until Martin Luther King was assassinated, and then the riots happened, and it burned down. It burnt down. And I think just the idea of helplessness. I think MLK said it himself. A riot is the voice of the unheard, right? Uh, you
The
know, the
voiceless,
yeah, the voiceless, right? The disenfranchised, and upon his death, the people lashed out, and many of those buildings were just destroyed. Um, Sadly enough, it stayed like that for a couple of decades. But the artists began to show up, and I love to tell that story. That is when artists began to uh, come back out. They come back out. They came back out and kind of began to perform in these little spaces. Right in a little cafe next to a dilapidated building. Um, they would, and then once the poets came, then the musicians showed up, and then
Yep.
you know what I mean, and then more the graffiti artists began to show up, uh, and then eventually the administration, the local administration noticed and took notice and began to invest in the area, and then it started to thrive once again. And now U Street is a hub. It is a beautiful space, and a lot of the memories are still there. I say in the poem, I've fallen in love about 100 times out there, and I still do every time I go out there. It's a beautiful spot.
Yeah, and you have Bloom Bar. We have Spit Dat open mic, I think at Woolly Mammoth Theater, if that's still happening. I just
Yes.
love that we have the shared language of DC in all of the spots. And I wanted to speak about, I feel like the poets show up, and the poets are the ones who are like the village storytellers. And your whole story reminded me of Janelle Monáe and her book. It's called like The Memory Librarian, and it talks about, like, that's my book recommendation. It's like about someone who literally is the librarian of everyone's memories, so no one remembers anything except for this one person, and like what happens when like that gets infiltrated and stuff. So that's a really cool book, and I love Janelle Monáe and her music.
That was written
too.
by her?
Yep.
I love her even more now. I did not know that. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I want to look that up.
Yeah, a musician and a writer, and I feel like music especially influences your poetry too. I wish you could have set up with like a mic and everything, because the way you were delivering your poems was so great. I want to ask you about your musicality and sound in your poems. What role does sound play in your poetry, and what do you usually think about the relationship between a written poem and a spoken one, and how does performance influence how you write?
Yeah. No, that's a great question. I think that the music has always been a huge part of my life. I recall I recall laying in bed late at night, after my parents, put me to bed, and they think I'm asleep, but I'm laying up, and then they turn on the music, and I know that it was a very relaxing and very it was a soothing thing to know that my parents were there and there was music playing, and that kind of lulled me to sleep. Do you know what I mean? So that's why I mentioned James Brown a lot, because there was a lot of James Brown played in my house. There was a lot of Aretha Franklin played in my house. A lot of these soulful sounds, and I kind of translated to when I became older. I played saxophone and trumpet.
I didn't know that. That's
Yeah.
super cool.
I can probably toot out a few notes if I'm forced to. That was my thing. And I played in the marching band. I played in go-go bands, which is a DC cultural staple. The go-go music is for those who don't know, is a very percussive type of funk music that is very repetitive. And at a go-go, you'll have like 3 or 4 different percussionists. You'll have a main drummer, you'll have a conga player, you'll have another person maybe playing whatever, timbales or something like that, but you'll have lots of percussion, and then of course you have a keyboard player or a horn player like myself, but it's very repetitive, very call and response. So I did that in high school a lot, and the call and response, I think, is kind of what got me into it made my transition into poetry easy, because also I was into hip hop and rapping. So it was a gradual transition as I kind of took steps towards my, creating my own style, because I learned all these things separately, but then I got old enough to kind of create my own voice, right? And listening, I can create pieces from listening to music pretty easily. If you can play an instrumental or any type of song with no lyrics, then I will, create the lyrics to it. I'll create a hook. I'll create a story,
Yeah.
based on the mood, on the mood of this song. Sometimes there's a sexy little, purr, and then I can kind of, okay, all right. I'm hearing a love story. I'm hearing a story of heartbreak or something like that. I can read the mood of a song and kind of create the lyrics pretty easily. So.
Yeah. And then you can create the music with your own language and your own words, and then make it live without like the backing track, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I guess dropping it out and then kind of, expanding. Yeah, I do that too. I have several pieces where I wrote to music, but then I never performed them to, with the backing tracks, the music itself. So that's been, yeah. So I never really thought about that until you just told me.
Well, that's
so
good. People always ask me like, oh, what's the difference between like a songwriter and a poet? And I think like that's the difference, is that poets and poetry have to create the music, versus like in a song, you can be a little bit more relaxed about your words. You don't have to be as precise with your images because you have another thing carrying it with you. It's just like a musical versus a play. Like a musical, some of the lyrics don't have to be as good. Some of the instrumentals don't have to be as good if like the lyrics are amazing. But a play, when you just have the words, you have to make sure that each line lands where it's supposed to.
Absolutely. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And when you have the music will kind of fill in that spot.
Yep.
Otherwise, and I like to make the words in the music dance. You do that too. Because you're a dancer. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about that. How you create pieces. And I've wanted to see. Did you ever do that before when you did a piece? I saw you perform at the Kennedy Center. Didn't you have a poem?
Yes.
You danced in.
Yes, it was a basketball poem where I pre-recorded me reading it, and then I did like an interpretive dance to the poem, which was really fun because that poem was super strong in its physical descriptions of like what it's like to like throw a basketball, and it was just about me being 9 years old on a rec center court in Glover Park. So also DC, like on a hot August night, like school's about to start in a few days, and I'm just like trying to cling on to staying up as late as possible for as long as I could. That was really fun.
I remember that one vividly. Yes, beautiful. Yeah. So yeah, the combining of genres, man, is so much fun, man, and I love doing that. I did a project in celebration of Muhammad Ali's 77th birthday, I believe at the time, where I wrote poems to a dance troupe, and then we played like snippets of Muhammad's speeches, and it was called The Opulence of Integrity. Yeah, The Opulence of Integrity. And so you just brought that memory back. So yeah, I love doing that. Combining genres, man, is such a wonderful thing. We need to do more of that.
Yeah, and I don't think I mentioned it in your bio, but you're also the director of poetry for Words, Beats, and Life, right?
Yeah, yes, I am.
So that's a huge arts overall, but also spoken word organization in DC, and we've collaborated on that end. And I remember performing with you guys my poem "I Come From a City," which is also DC centric, and you incorporated some like other cultural or community group was doing West African drumming to it, and I just feel like that's another cross genre collaboration that celebrates both art forms and then creates a new thing that elevates the entire piece. So I really appreciate your work. with
I
that.
remember that. Yeah. That was with Farafina Khan. I remember that
Mhm.
that show well. But I think, Words Beats in Life is a beautiful organization. It's based off of the culture of hip hop. And for those who don't know, the four main elements are breakdancing, graffiti art, DJing, and MCing, and which lends itself towards poetry. And uh, well, they give free after school classes and tutelage in these art forms, but then it expands beyond that into um, chess. We love
Oh,
teaching chess. We
yep.
love teaching chess. You know what I mean? Strategic thinking. Always know what your next move is going to be.
Yeah. Thinking ahead.
Um, yeah, right. The business of music. Most of these folks, these young people, are trying to become, working artists. So we want them to be able to, do so and not, get caught in any traps. You know what I mean? And be taken advantage of. So we teach them about the business of music and how to, sign contracts and things of that nature. We just run the gamut. The job, we always say, we try to create a network of young artists and just provide a launching pad for them.
Yeah, that's really great. You're giving like a foundation of financial literacy and like business know-how that like can really it's the tools of being an artist, and it's also like how to be a successful artist. I think that's you're taking it to the next level. And I also wanted to ask you, like as a mentor for young poets and the literary community, what has that experience taught you, and how has working with youth influenced your own writing and your own poetic practice?
I think that these kids are. I'm excited to watch them because, as I mentioned, I didn't realize my path until I was well until adulthood, and to watch them discover themselves at 13 through 19, I'm so encouraged by that, and I hope that uh, they, by the time they're 19 or around your age, you are at a place that I didn't get to until I was 30. Do you know what I mean? Like, developmentally, as an artist. So that's beautiful, and so that part is encouraging. I think that the what else I've learned is that we have to give them the space. You have to give young people the space. So often they are in they're put in positions where they're to be seen and not heard, and once they discover they have the space, they'll flourish. I mean, provided they've been given the tools to properly express themselves, and that's where we kind of do both at the same time. You know what I mean? We give them the space, but we kind of also give them the tools. And I'm I'm blessed every day by the ability to do that. I was a teaching artist for about 10, almost 15 years before I got this job at WBL, and I always tell these young people, tell your story, uh, um, but tell it in an original way. Tell the common story in an uncommon way.
Yeah.
That could be because I know you have it in you. So
That's just like, I feel like I had this conversation before about cliches, but something's cliche because it's true and it's something relatable. But if you can take a cliche and then re-say it and redo it in your own words with your own personal spin on it, that's when something really fresh is popping out.
yes, absolutely. That's all. That really, yeah. I get inspired when I do that. Even now, I was just the other day. I watched some young poets from Baltimore. They showed up at Slamtastic and
Mhm.
really just tore the stage down, and they flipped. And I brought my mother with me, and that was kind of yeah. They said some things that kind of made me cringe a little bit, like oh man, you know.
My mom's
But
here, like,
yeah,
guys.
right. Oh, But the idea of flipping things over and looking at it and holding it up and shaking the topic and seeing what falls out, that's that. I love that. I love that. Even when mom was there.
Well, that's so great. I feel like it's also really silly and funny to hear that even when you grow up, like your mom will always be your mom. And you never really grow out of that feeling of being like embarrassed, like, oh, my mom's here, like, uh-oh, like have to like look over my shoulder and see what she's thinking.
I
That's
try not. Yeah,
fantastic.
yeah. I'm still her big boy. So.
Yep. Yeah. Well, I mean, your entire career, you said that like you found it late, but regardless of whatever point you found it, you have had so many accomplishments, so many accolades. And I just want to ask you, what has been the most rewarding part of your poetry foray so far?
um, like there are moments that really like stick out, like, oh, and it's like, meeting the famous people, shaking hands with Jesse Jackson, or meeting icons like Dick Gregory. um I performed, just before Obama, stuff like that. Those are really cool moments. But having somebody that you respect come up to you and tell you like, you're next, or I've been watching you, and that one thing you did really, really, you know, or even if they offer some critique, if somebody who I respect comes in and says, "Hey, that piece you did, but it sounded good, but how about if you flip the first stanza and the last stanza or whatever and say something like that?" That really inspires me too, because you're listening to me,
Yeah.
like like that will really, really do my heart
Yeah.
well, just to hear that. Um, so I would say those little moments mean the most to me. But if I had to give you the paper one, obviously it would be the performing for the Martin Luther King unveiling for the memorial. Yeah. My partner, Natural RDP from POEM-CEES, he and we were asked to create a poem in celebration of that moment, and I tried. I did my damnedest to deliver something that was grandiose and would really mark the occasion. Um, he and we did, and we performed with a violinist, Mira Ben Ari.
Hmm.
Yeah. She's a Grammy winning violinist. So she performed behind us, and we kind of wove our poem through her music. So
Yeah.
still doing that.
Yeah. Still combining genres, combining artistic forms. That's super cool. And also, I took a Bob Dylan class this past semester, and he had this one like series of performances called Rolling Thunder, where it was just like him and all of his friends and fellow artists that he respected, and there was a violinist there too. So I feel like that's cool. Just like when you have like people who are doing their thing and putting in the work, like that's when that's when people notice and pay attention. And it just goes to show that like you were asked with your partner to perform this, but it was because you were putting in the work on POEM-CEES, because you were showing up every single day and that you weren't just like sitting around waiting for the call. Like you, like the call came because you were doing it. uh,
Hmm.
so I'm really proud. I also am just amazed that it's been only 15 years since that monument has been there. Like I feel like it's just such a core part of DC that I can't imagine what the tidal basin would look like without it. And I'm glad that it's there. Yeah.
Wow, I didn't think about that. Yeah. Time flies, man. Time
Hmm.
flies. I remember when it wasn't there, but you're right. It's not going anywhere, I hope.
No, they'd have to
um,
get like a really big, really big construction vehicle or something. I see we have a question from the audience, which I love. I'm going to ask it. And if anyone has any other questions, feel free to pop them in the chat. So this question is, some writers have pushed back against the notion that lyrics to music should be held in the same regard as poetry. Do you agree or disagree with this? Should hip hop be regarded differently than other music genres due to its deep connection with poetry? So yeah, that's a thinker. Curious to hear your thoughts on that one.
Huh. All right. So, held in the same regard as poetry. I think, well, I'm hearing two different questions, because it's like lyrics to music, that is, you can sing, you can rap, all right? You can scat, you can chant, so lyrics to music covers all of those, includes all of those. So I think that it should be held in high regard, right? Poetry alone is a wonderful tool, right? I think music added to poetry. Matter of fact, RAP, rhythm and poetry, right? That is widely what's the acronym is considered, right? So I think the poetry the voice is an instrument, okay? The voice is an instrument. So even when you're speaking, there's music happening. Like a saxophone and your vocal cords are both wind instruments. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Right. So the idea of I think poetry is music happening anyway. Really.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? Just poetry is you're using your instrument. So I just kind of cheated on that question a little bit.
Yeah, it's okay.
But,
I mean, I kind of have like a roundabout follow up to that. Like, if poetry is happening everywhere, and it is, if you just like sit down and observe, or you're walking around and paying attention, you will see the poetic moments happening. And that's where I'm going to take it to Epiphany. It's an observational poem set, of course, in all places, Ronald Reagan National Airport, the site of many delayed flights, the site of many, many long TSA lines and motorcades and just crazy stuff that happens there. So you're just waiting there at the metro stop, and then you find a poem from these two angels, from this old couple. How does that happen? Like, how often does poetry just arrive from observation for you?
What nowadays? All
Yeah.
the time, all the time, because I really, I don't, I take pains now to find it in those moments, to identify those moments, because I try to get forensic now with my memories and my recollections. The trickle of sweat down the side of my face. If I walk out into the sun, the buzz of a fly, just going past your ear. Those little things, I'm really, really paying attention to, because that's where all the beauty is. I mean, as long as I'm extra sensitive, hypersensitive to those moments, then I know I'm alive. I know I'm alive. Full disclosure, I had a heart attack.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, so those moments, mean so much more to me now. Do you know what I mean? I want to always just keep, stay locked into life as long as possible, as much as possible, and just hang on to those and create those poems based on that, so yeah.
And become more appreciative of the slower moments.
The slower, yeah. Mm-hmm.
When
Yeah.
you're
Absolutely. I don't need to be on a roller coaster going, wee. No, I can. I mean, that's fun too, but
yeah.
I can be in line on the ground and watch it, and I'll still find the poem.
Yeah. And that line of taking the gold line back to heaven was beautiful. I read that and I heard you deliver it a couple minutes ago, and my jaw just dropped. Like, when are they building that? Probably gonna take another 100 years, I think.
Right. Yeah. No. Yeah. There'll be a delay, I'm sure, but I'm sure we got some folks we want to visit, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think that's another poem there. I might, if you don't write it, I might write it next.
Hey,
Yeah.
please have it. I would love to read that from you.
Yeah.
See that? We're still giving each other prompts, even to this day.
Exactly. How often does like Washington, D.C. imagery crop out or like pop up in your poetry?
Every now and then. I tend to write about the people more so than images or places. I wrote. I have a signature piece about U Street, and I talk about all the different things and the ways that it created me and molded me. I have that poem, and that's one of my few pieces where I really identify things on U Street. I talk about the Duke Ellington mural. I talk about Lincoln Theater. Blah blah blah. You know what I mean? I actually count the number of cinder blocks on this particular street. I mean, it was. I told you I get forensic sometimes, so I really got into the poem. But that was like my labor of love.
Yeah.
So I like writing about the people. I have a poem somewhere dedicated to Chuck Brown. Do you know what I mean? I have a poem dedicated to a gentleman by the name of Face, who is a really popular poet, street poet. I have a friend named Kenny Carroll who wrote the immaculate Marion Barry poem. You may have heard it, but I'll share it with you. But
please do.
Yeah. So, so the people really motivate me more so than the scenery.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I remember when we were in I think it was last summer, it was the Washington Writers Residency, and one of the prompts was, it was to go find a mural in DC and write something inspired by the mural. So that was like an ekphrastic piece of writing that I enjoyed. And another really great initiative of DC is the Golden Triangle Haiku Competition. And I think last year the theme was bridge, and it was like kind of like bridge of friendship, bridge of belonging. But the winner, like the overall like DMV winner, was someone who said like, the haiku went like, give me the bridge, y'all. And it was Chuck Brown. It was a reference to Chuck Brown. And I thought that was just like such a clever poet's way of viewing the prompt bridge and immediately turning it to music. And I loved it.
You know what? I remember that. That project. Do you recall the throne? There's a somewhere in there was mention of a art piece called "The Throne of the Third Heavens Millennial Assembly." No,
okay.
you don't remember.
I don't remember. Okay. Is it a mural or it's
it's an art piece that was created by a man who was widely considered to be insane. He was a janitor for the DC government for however many days. His name was James Hampton. For every day for several years, he in his garage created a makeshift throne, elaborate, using glue and aluminum foil, and it's huge. It takes up, at this point, it took up his entire garage, and then he passed away, and then they discovered it, and it was like, this thing is beautiful, and they put it on display at I think the National Art Gallery. I think that's where it is.
Probably.
Yeah. Take a look at it. But I mentioned that because it's a iconic piece of DC art, but doesn't get much mention. And I was like, I would love to write a piece either about that or about him. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that's like another piece of DC lore that you just kind of have to talk to people to find out. But like, why isn't this just so interesting and cool? Like, even I go to school in Philly, and I feel like pretty surface level, like Philly cultural art is Isaiah Zagar's Magic Gardens, and he like has all of these crazy cool mosaics, and he like mosaicked an abandoned lot, and then the owner came back and threatened to like destroy it, and then the whole community came together to buy the lot so that they could keep it for the neighborhood and for the community. But like sometimes I talk to people about it and they're like, "Oh, I've never heard of that before. What is that?" I'm like, "What do you mean you like this is really cool and I've only been here for 3 years. Like we need to talk more about it."
Yeah,
So
right. Yeah, man. Yeah, discovering a place, and then, like you said, finding that lore and just being immersed in it. That's a beautiful thing. So,
yeah.
and how do you like? Yeah, let's talk about that for a minute. I know you're interviewing me, but I'm going to ask you some questions now. How do you like? How do you
You're
like it?
turning the tables. How do I
Right.
like Philly?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm a native Washingtonian, so I feel like I love the city no matter what. Like just any city. So Philly is really fun. The poetry scene is interesting. We have the Kelly Writers House at UPenn, which has a lot of artists and authors and poets come visit a lot. There's this like Ethiopian bar and spoken word place called Abyssinia, where sometimes they have open mics. And my poetry professor, who is one of the language poets, like from the 50s and 60s, really encouraged us to go there and visit. And Philly overall, it's been a really fun place to like kind of discover on my own. Yeah, that's what I would say.
Beautiful. Yes.
Oh, yeah,
I love that for you. I love it.
me too. We have another. I know you wanted to interview me, but I'm going to steer back to some audience questions. Maybe
Okay.
I'm slipping out of this. We can do like another. We can bring it back for Patrick and Sophia part 2. But these are some more audience questions from Victor. Did your own understanding of your poetry change over time? Like, I guess with some time, has it become deeper? I guess this question is asking, like, have you ever written a poem and then like stepped away from it and found a new meaning with that time in between?
Yeah. 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 That's the great thing about growing as an artist and as a person and just getting older. Um, I always just because I love looking back at some of my earlier works, and then I'm hearing a voice that's not me now. Like
Yeah.
I wouldn't use this language. I wouldn't use this. I wouldn't create these stanza breaks. I wouldn't have done this way or that way. Um, that's number one. So I do see that I'm growing and just changing as an artist as the years go by. But I'm also seeing and understanding that my thought process was different too. I was very I came from a hip hop background. I always, when I was a kid, I was like, "Hey, I'm gonna be a rapper, mom."
Yeah.
But uh, I began, as I got older, I realized that they're not that different from each other. You know what I mean? They're interchangeable, depending on how treat the craft. You know what I mean? Um, so that began to inform my writing after that. Once I made that distinction, then I was writing with more intention. I was writing because in my younger days, it was like, first off, everything was a freestyle, right? It was like, okay, I'll say what I'm going to say, and once I say it, it's done. It's in the ether, and it'll never come back to me. And if it doesn't, I don't care. Or if I'll write it as a free write, and I will never edit. I'll just let it go. I'll even put it in a chat book and just publish it, right? But now I'm much more, over the years I became more intentional, and so I mean there are moments for freestyling, but in this, at this age, at this big age, I want to create a legacy that is established, you know? So, yeah.
Yeah. I think like over my like relatively short tenure and time as a poet, I've definitely noticed a lot of evolution, and it's cool to like go back and trace the growth, trace the moments where like you have changed. I'm gonna ask one more question from the audience. It's a little bit complex. It's a little bit like philosophical, so maybe we'll work together on this one. So
Okay.
Victor's also asking, how could poetry be translated, written, and transited via time and perceivers, even considering that the meaning of the poetry is never the same, like even for the writer, like sometimes the meaning changes, and I guess the meaning changes between the author and the audience. So like I'm also puzzling over this question, like even with like freestyle and improv stuff, like the meaning changes and the poetry changes every second. So how can we like record and translate a poem that is constantly evolving and whose meaning is constantly evolving? Yeah, so it's like kind of like a deeper question. Do you have any thoughts?
Well, no, I'm trying to grasp this question. Like, so no, I don't quite get it. I don't quite get it.
Then maybe what are your thoughts on like poetry when you like give it to the audience? How do you think like a poem always stays the same because of like the way that it's written, or do you think like the meaning changes depending on who's reading it and like where it goes afterward? Like do you think like I guess this is like a question of IP and like ownership over a work. Like when you write something and you perform it, like is it still yours, or does it become the audience's? I'm going to reframe it that way.
Yeah. No, poetry is not ours. Poetry is not ours. You can create it for yourself, but if you ever speak it or write it, unless unless you give it to anybody other than yourself, then it's no longer yours. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. It's a gift. It's like the same way you would treat a gift. And I feel like when I write poetry, it definitely feels like it's not coming from me. I'm like a vessel for something higher than myself.
I think that and as we move on, our and when I say move on, I mean as we leave this mortal coil, the work that we leave behind is subject to the interpretation, the rules, and the intelligence or lack thereof of the people reading it. You know what I mean? And so I think we have to be very careful about. Well, I was going to say we have to be careful of to not be misunderstood, but that's not really up to us, is it? I mean, it's up to them. I mean, we say it the best we can, deliver it with as much precision and succinct clarity. But I think if we don't, if the real crime would be to not say it, right? To not write it,
Yep.
to not express and observe things. There are things happening in other lands that I wish I could. I wish I could shout from the rooftops. You know what I mean? And I am. We're writing about it. We're going to put it out. We got to do the work. Do you know what I mean?
And if anything, if we're leaving a legacy behind, I'm glad that it's a legacy of poetry.
Definitely, because that is the one thing that it moves the needle. It moves the culture. You know what I mean? They come for the poets first.
But the poets also get to dictate the culture with Ustri and stuff. So
absolutely.
I think that's our time for now, but I could talk with you forever. You are an inspiration, a light. Hearts all around. Thank you so much, Patrick. Thank you for your poetry. Thank you for your words of wisdom. I hope you keep spitting on the mic. Yeah.
Thank you so much, and thank you all for having me. I hope you
Thank you.
guys got something out of it. I definitely did.
Yes. Take care. Thank you,
care.
everyone.